Good morning and welcome to the first panel session in the financial services track. It's great to be back here in person at the ASEAN Summit, connecting with our customers and partners. My name is Stuart Loy. I lead our solutions architecture team covering global financial services customers across the APAC region, and I'm based right here in Singapore. In this session, we'll be discussing the use of AI/ML technology within financial services, and I'm joined by an esteemed panel with representatives from across the industry. On my left is Samuel Chu. He's the head of data science and analytics at Singlife, one of the largest homegrown financial services companies from Singapore. In the middle, we have Dr. Jock Len Tan. He is the CEO and founder of Ada Technologies, an ML solutions provider to the financial services industry. And on the right-hand side is Luis Cruz. He's an executive director and the regional head of infrastructure automation and AI at DBS, Singapore's largest bank. We have just 30 minutes and a lot to discuss, so let's dive right in. AI/ML is now used extensively across all industries and business functions. According to a recent McKinsey survey, almost 60% of companies use machine learning. However, really successful business outcomes from AI/ML depend on the careful selection of the right use case. What are some of the use cases that you feel are and will be most impactful in the financial services industry? Dr. Tan, let me come to you first.
Yeah, actually we started our journey in AI/ML about 10 years ago. We started it when we were still in the research lab. I was the executive director of the Institute for Infocom Research, government-funded R&D lab in Singapore. At that time, we were working with multiple industry partners, and we found that AI/ML could bring very useful results to companies. So we left the institute and formed IDA, and so we have been on a journey for now 6-7 years. So today, we are very focused on insurance, and in the area of insurance, there are multiple areas where you can apply AI/ML. With really great effect, right? The three areas are, one is in automation of your internal processes. The second is for risk and compliance, where you're worried about leakage and so on. And the third area is for upsell, cross-sell, generate more revenue, right? The first one, automation, is for the COO of the company. The second one, risk and compliance, is for your board. And the third one is revenue is for your CEO. Okay. Now, it can bring tremendous impact, right? For example, in the area of automation of your internal processes, we applied it to the area of claims automation and in the area of fraud detection. So in the area of claims automation, because we have worked with many insurers, both in Singapore and overseas, we are very familiar with claims processes. We find that today, first, the process is very manual. Where there is automation, it tends to be what's called a workflow automation and maybe some RPAs. If you use workflow automation and RPA, you'll probably get an automation rate of maybe 20%. But when you apply AI/ML, you can bring that 20% to 60-70%, right? So it's a big boost in automation. And as a result of that boost, today, about more than half of the players, health insurance players in Singapore, use the AI/ML solutions that we have deployed. In the area of fraud detection, actually we are quite surprised that there are a lot of potential for what's called FWA, fraud, waste, and abuse. You can use outlier detection to detect cases of FWA, right? Outlier detection is really good because you do not codify the rules. You look for what's called outliers between the cohort, and then from the outliers within the cohort, you can then trigger to find where the outlier cases are, and then when you investigate. In fact, oftentimes, the opportunities from FWA, the reduction in that cost, is more than enough to basically pay for the rest of the system. So I would say a lot of potential in the application of AI/ML, first in the insurance industry where we are very focused in, but also in banking and in other areas.
Great, thank you. And Luis, maybe you can tell us about some of the use cases you're working on in the banking space.
Sure. So for us, in the data space, when we talk about this, we talk about enabling technologies so that our business can actually do some more use cases on top of it. So we're very proud to say we enable a lot of use cases today. We have over 10,000 machine learning jobs that actually run, that have been created by different data scientists. Some of the biggest challenges we have about enabling the tech is that there's always this blended combination of on-prem, hybrid to the cloud, and extending to the cloud for those capabilities that you lack on premise, right? So we've been a true believer of cloud native technologies. So we've natively built our extension of our data platform into AWS. The myriad of use cases we have are for the entire bank, which is what we're really proud to say today, that we have a way to manage in a secure way, have the proper governance, have the right framework, and so that our data scientists or business analysts or RMs can actually consume the data and create their use cases on their own, right? So for us on the data side, we see ourselves as enablers. We enable the business, as an extension of their service to give them the value that they need, and make sure that all the protection of the data is there.
Thanks, Luis. And Samuel, what about the insurance industry?
I don't think I'm going to repeat a lot of what Dr. Tan already said. The only one I would say for insurance is, on top of the operational efficiency things that we do a lot, there's a lot of, so we're an intermediated business, so a lot of the stuff that around financial needs analysis, robo-advisor, I think that's an area where, we can start democratizing it for more consumers and letting our agents do a better job. But mostly what we do now is operational efficiency, because the scope or maybe the literacy of the AI ML is not there for the users, which is something we'll talk about later. But for now it's mostly operational efficiency use cases.
Got it, thank you. And I'll stay with you, Samuel, for the next question. With AI being such a prevalent concept in technology today, how do you manage demand from your business stakeholders and integrate AI into your business processes in order to democratize access to these capabilities?
Yeah, so most of the time, the business doesn't come to me and go, hey, use this AI and generate value, right? So only in special use cases like generative AI, ChatGPT, I have been approached to say, hey, let's start using some of this stuff and more for PR value. But quite often, it's kind of like the cart leading the horse. If you come to me with like, hey, I want to use large language models for. So it's more like, hey, I have a turnaround time issue in my call center, or I have a conversion rate issue in my agency force. How do you solve it? And then, quite often at the time, a simple dashboard or some analysis will work. And in certain circumstances where the process is a lot of data and it's repeatable, then you can recommend AI ML. The other thing to democratize AI is also literacy. So a lot of business processes don't understand how they can embed AI ML into it. I get a lot of feedback, which is, oh, I have this problem, can you build an AI model and solve it, right? But AI model is a probabilistic outcome. So you need to have an understanding of risk management, how what a false positive rate, what a true positive rate is, before you can start changing the people part of it to start embedding that into your AI, into your business process. And the other thing I would add to is great AI should be seamless. So, like just imagine your mobile phone, it's there, but the AI works underneath, but people don't know that it's there. So a lot of the stuff that Dr. Tan was talking about, like claims assessment, our claims assessment actually doesn't know that an AI is there, but it's like, okay, when you get given it, they will only assess the cases that is not straight through processing. So I think that's probably, we need to put a bit of a product mindset as kind of data scientists and data engineers to go, how do we create a great user experience such that our business users don't actually know that this is AI?
Yeah, that makes sense. AI that's invisible to the end consumer, ultimately. And Luis, do you face a lot of internal demand for AI within DBS, and how are you managing that?
Oh, yeah. Demand is probably the biggest challenge. Every idea is a demand, basically. capabilities. I think the ability to engineer properly when you're engineering any data platform, you need to envision for a myriad and create a myriad of use cases inside, and some of the use cases that you might not have been prepared for. Capabilities there for AI and ML. Traditional ML is potentially where the biggest amount of demand is. This is, regressions, statistical regressions that you're doing, whether you're doing k-means clustering, whether you're using Bayesian models, et cetera. So there's still a huge high demand on what it's, basically supervised models in machine learning. Then there's the other side of things, which is the deep learning track, where you find the GPUs and the extreme computational, and you need that bursting capacity, right? How you burst, basically, right? You don't need dedicated GPUs all the time. You gotta burst in, shut it down, consume. Ephemeral workloads like that is where we actually have leveraged a lot of cloud native capabilities to spin up, specific GPU instances, burst, train the model, shut it down. Now we got the model. We're not really today, like when I talk about enabling, right? Today we can enable a GPT model, we can enable a Llama model, a Flan model. It doesn't really matter what model it is. There will be one model today, one model tomorrow, right? They need to be swappable, right? And we're coming to that ecosystem where one model will not fit for everything. You will pick and choose different models, but you need to have the ability to spin up, right? And burst capacity to actually fine tune, train the model, make it more efficient. So yeah, I would say, Stuart, the amount of use cases we have is fast, but when we engineer the data platform itself, it's fully packed with even capabilities today that have not been used to that extent, right? But we do realize that there's going to be a point in time that they will.
Great. And Dr. Ten, is this a challenge you face when implementing your solutions with your customers?
Because we are a vendor, so we go out to companies and talk. I think the question about people wanting more AI solutions, I would relate it to the question of maturity, AI maturity in your organization, right? AI maturity in an organization means how ready they are to deploy AI. So there's a continuum. So when we start with a company who's actually new to AI, actually a lot of skeptics, right? People think it's black magic. People think it's just BS. They don't believe it. Then once you have people accept it, then maybe a lot of people maybe buy too much in the hype and then actually overinflate it, right? So it's a maturity, right? So usually in the initial, you have point solutions. I build an AI solution that works for this particular function, right? But as an organization mature in the adoption of AI, that point solution cannot work anymore because it's too inefficient to build too many multiple point solutions. You better to have a platform type solution, right? When you start a platform solution, then you need to have governance and so on. Actually, so you look into this concept of AI maturity, and I think companies will need to go through that journey in the initial to evangelize that AI is powerful, can be useful, maybe to prove that it can be useful in some cases, once you get top management buy-in and so on, and then this concept of building AI DNA into the system comes in, and then when that happens, then you have a proper data, you have all the tools in there, and then you can then build at scale this AI that runs, right? But that would be kind of at the right-hand side of the scale where you really mature. I think some organizations in Singapore have now reached that end of the stage, but some are still at the very beginning stage. But I think one can experiment with AI, one can use AI no matter where you are. It's just that one needs to build that confidence first.
Got it. Thank you. Samuel, one of my favorite things about building ML solutions on AWS is the capacity it provides to rapidly innovate. Experiments can be spun up and torn down in minutes, dramatically reducing the cost of iterative innovation. How are you leveraging AWS services both to innovate and then ultimately productionize and operate your ML models?
Okay, so obviously in AWS, I'm a fan of AWS, so that's why I'm here. So we use AWS exclusively as our cloud platform as of now. And one of the things I find very good about AWS is, so first of all, you need to set up a sandbox environment, which is something that, you don't need to go for the compliance checks, IT security, PDPA and all that stuff. And you need to make sure that your data scientists don't upload any sensitive data. But once you get there, there's so many tools available on AWS that you can use within the free tier of their pricing. So, like recognize, recognition, comprehend, text track. They're all off-the-shelf AI models, which is very good for financial services when you don't have a lot of data to train these models. And one of the things I will say about financial services is the business model is not the AI model, right? A lot of the times we build a lot of what I call weak AI models to help the Dr. Tan's point of your processes, like, hey, I need an allocation for leads, or I need a predictive underwriting model. So the whole business cannot be built around the AI model, like your Grab or your Uber or Netflix. So what you end up doing is you take a lot of these off-the-shelf stuff is good enough for you to go and try out and give immediate value, and then you can prove to your senior leadership, oh, okay, now let's use this, and then you can do the whole production deployment and ML ops kind of framework, which AWS has, the SageMaker Studio. But that's a bigger investment, but at least you can, try things out before you can, try before you buy, kind of.
Great stuff. And Luis, you've already spoken about innovating and experimenting, but could you touch on some of the AWS services that specifically enable that for you?
I think today we heavily rely on key strategic components that have been there from AWS for quite some time. EMR, Spark, big data processing engines, right? Extending capabilities in SageMaker. Basically the white canvas, I call it, when you give a Jupyter notebook to somebody and they basically can go out there and create, right? Data sync is one of those services that we actually use as part of the ecosystem for the data transportation method that we've created. And then we use some other sources like Glue, right, for helping us manage some of the metadata that we have, but it's not all of the metadata. Let's recall that we have, hybridity on it, right? So we need to make metadata across, universally interpretable. But yeah, those are some of the few services that we actually consume today. We got others like, recognition and, translate, transcribe, poly. All of these are services that we're actually, doing testing on, and then they work very well,
Great stuff. Let's get on to something pretty topical. One branch of AI that has captured public attention quite like no other is generative AI. Amazon SageMaker already has extensive capabilities in this space. Customers can spin up both proprietary and publicly available foundation models via SageMaker Jumpstart, leveraging on-demand compute. And we recently announced Amazon Bedrock, which will provide a fully managed service for foundation models, allowing you to privately customize them with your own data without ever managing infrastructure. How do you see generative AI taking shape within the financial services industry, Dr. Tan?
I think the impact of generative AI will be tremendous, though there are some issues that need to be resolved right now. The current large language models, first is the data stops at about, I think, 2021, right? And it would not include your data relevant to your site, right? The models are built on public domain data and so on. So regarding data, if you talk about public domain data, if you are an enterprise and you use that model, then are you liable when the data used to build the engine uses some public domain data and people say, I have copyright to it? So that's one issue. The second issue, it does not have your data. It does not know your data because your data is private and not being part of it. But fortunately, you can build models that adjunct your private data with the public domain data that will give the extension. But the third area which one has to be very careful about is this thing about the AI making mistakes and hallucinate, right? It says things very confidently, but it's wrong, okay? I used it, I've seen it. It will tell you something with great confidence, but it's wrong, right? It's wrong. But it's one thing to play with it, but if you're an enterprise and it's kind of responding in your name, then you could get into trouble, right? So you have to build these boundary conditions and checks to make sure that it don't wander outside when it's wrong. There is a boundary to check it, I think. I think if you have got these three things, ability to make sure that the data used to build your model is okay, you're able to supplement it with your own data so that it knows your business, yet not having your data get into the general model. The third is you have the boundary condition there, then I think it will be a tremendous tool. The power is amazing.
Yeah, great insight. And I think we'll see some of those things actually with Bedrock, the ability to customize the models with corporate data. Luis, you're already quite deeply invested in this space. Can you tell us about some of the work you're doing and also the direction of travel for generative AI?
Yeah, let's not really think that forward on the future. Let's talk about today, right? I mean, when I say today is we as an institution are actively pursuing almost 34 generative use cases already. Look, I think the questions to be asked are, in the financial industry is, the first thing is you have services like ChatGPT that are a generally available service that actually has mutability. It's immutable, basically, with the prompts that you send, it stores, and you can actually see them, and it keeps a track of the conversations that you've had. You also have services that are generative in nature, that are ephemeral, that are designed to actually not store any of the prompts, and they don't consume any of your data to actually retrain the model, right? Then there's the capabilities that we believe are probably the ones that are going to shape the most. For example, we use SageMaker today to host large language models inside. You can actually turn SageMaker into a SageMaker hosted model, and you can actually generate an inferencing endpoint into that SageMaker model. Now, rest in mind that there are already agreements, for example, in AWS with Hugging Face, right? So basically, you can import Hugging Face models directly from the open source community and bring them to your SageMaker notebook, and actually, you can do the tuning and the training there, right? Once it's there, basically, the model is yours. And let's be real, not every model requires 560 billion parameters, right? A model of 2 billion parameters is just good enough if it's properly trained for the area and the niche that you're asking it to do, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's not really limited to one particular model. It's actually limited to what the use case is, right? And what model are you going to use for, right? Some models are really good at summarization. Some others are extremely good at generating content out of nothing, right? Now, the key for securing it is actually, there was a lot of talk back 10 years ago on AI explainability, right? In the deep learning side, right, chain of thoughts actually fixes that, right? So basically, what you need to do is for every prompt that you send, on the back end, we need to make a call to have the model explain basically how it derived that output and storing it. And so you need to keep a log of all the prompting, right? And basically, you need to keep a log of every generated answer that is coming across from the model out, right? So that you can explain how the model derived that result, right? The bursting capabilities that we use from AWS today, actually for training models, is one of the keys, right? You don't want to have static GPUs sitting on a data center forever, right? So you might just bring the model, train, burst the GPUs, do the computation, and then shut it down, right? Then if you want to move the model on-prem and use persistent GPUs, because the model requires, you can do that. But yeah, that's kind of what we see shaping. I believe the models we're talking about today are not the models we're going to be talking about in a year's time. So the flexibility that you guys design your architecture on is fundamental, right? So that you can easily swap, right, from one side to another. I think Titan is going to be one of those models that we're actually quite ecstatic and interested in using when Bedrock arrives.
Good to hear. Yes, Amazon Titan coming later this year. Samuel, are you seeing generative AI emerging in the insurance space?
So generally for financial services, maybe banks is a bit more brave, but insurers, we're kind of like, not laggards, but we never want to be the early adopters for any technology. And that's just the nature of a heavily regulated industry where, if you do something wrong, you get 7 years in jail, right? So it's not a case of just losing money. There's a bit of a personal liability as well for trying out with cutting edge technology. But having said that, that doesn't mean today we don't use it. I'll give you a little bit of cheat sheet of what me and my team currently uses it. So you can use stuff like ChatGPT, similar to the way you use Google, right? In the sense, and it has that, it remembers your conversations component as well. So, stuff like, even today, the questions you sent me, I threw it to ChatGPT, it gave me great answers, right? Whether it's right or wrong, but you have to have the human in the loop to go, okay, is this correct or is it wrong, right? Especially for coding, for a lot of coders who want to move from Python to, R to like SQL, it's a great tool for it to write like 70% or 80% of your code right there. You put it, it will not compile, but you can go and change it, right? But it will speed you up so much quicker. Stuff like doing presentations, you want a picture, you can go to the DALL-E to generate something, not licensed, right? So you can go and start using that to kind of do better presentations. So a lot of those use cases allow what traditional software developers or coders to be a lot more faster in what they do. And I think that's here now. It's not, you need to wait for it to be the future. It's just a lot of people, haven't really figured out. There's a lot of, on LinkedIn, a lot of cheat sheets on what prompts you need to give it to kind of get what you want. And I think we should start using that. And then eventually it will generate some more customer-facing kind of use cases.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with the point on coding. Definitely see that as a productivity enhancer. Dr. Tan, coming to you next. Artificial intelligence and machine learning help society tackle some of its most challenging problems and help business improve customer experiences and spur innovation. Along with the growing use and scale of AI comes the recognition that it should be used responsibly. What steps are you taking to ensure that your use of AI/ML respects human rights, dignity, and values such as equity, privacy, and fairness?
I think it's an extremely important question, and actually, what step I take? I take guidance from actually two agencies in Singapore, right? First, the MAS. MAS come out with this thing called FEAT, F-E-A-T guidelines. How do you deploy AI that's fair, equitable, accountable, and transparent, right? So MAS has got a FEAT guideline, and then the PDPC has got AI governance framework, right? Both these have been surfaced at the World Economic Forum and at the OECD. Actually, they're operating at international level. I would encourage everybody who's interested in AI to please look at these two documents. They give extremely good guidelines onto how you can deploy the system in a safe way. Plus, not just are there guidelines, they've gone further. They come up with a set of tools which you can deploy to verify, validate that your deployment is complying to these rules. So I think they've done really a fantastic work. You can find out on the website. Yeah.
Great stuff. And we have just about a minute left, so a very quick response on that from Luis and Samuel.
PDPC and MAS, we actually need to do, and we covered a lot of that to the extent. I think then there's the ethical piece of the artificial intelligence, which is a little more blur. We try to use AI and ML in concrete ways that generates value to our customers and to us. And what I'm trying to say about that is an improper use of AI will be, for example, something that is not intuitive. It's a system that it's consistently recommending you to a point where you're no longer really actually making the decisions. You're just taking the information for granted, right? So I don't fancy a lot of buzzwords, but I do like the word that is used generally as a co-pilot, right? We want the AI and ML models to be assisting rather than leading, right? And there's quite an ethical way of saying, well, if the AI was not leading, then it might not be that accurate, right? Because you still need human supervision to make decisions, et cetera, right? So I think the industry is going to be shaped in a very drastic way in the next 2 to 3 years. We're not talking we're not talking decades, right? Laws and regulations are going to put boundaries and doors we don't have today, right? To protect, I don't know, like neurological rights, right? Something that comes out of Columbia University. So the steps we're taking is, of course, model explainability, chain of thoughts in the deep learning space. On the AI ML that is supervised models, traditional models, right? We're making sure that the information we're providing is an assisted piece of information for you to make decisions, right? And that's how we believe we will continue to do so in a responsible way.
Thanks, Luis. And sorry, Samuel, but we're completely out of time now. Thanks so much. Please give a warm round of applause for my panel. Thank you.